Hello everybody, my name is Nathan Meltzer. I'm a violinist and a From the Top alum. I think I've been on the show 4 times at this point. My first time was back in 2011 when I was 11 and not bearded. I'm also the artistic director of Opus Illuminate, which is the program that's brought you this collection of repertoire and kind of discussion videos on these pieces that are by fantastic composers from historically underrepresented communities and heritages. And so today, I'm just going to take this moment to talk a little bit about Jessie Montgomery's Rhapsody No. 1. As you can see somewhere on the database, there's the recording that I made a couple months back. But Jessie Montgomery herself actually has a recording of this piece that I would highly recommend you check out. It's on her album Strum Music for Strings. It's really fantastic. It's on Spotify and, the works. So I'd highly recommend you check out that recording as well. That entire album, why not? But yeah, a bit about Jessie Montgomery. She's a violinist and composer based in New York City. She was the founding member of Public Quartet. She was in Catalyst Quartet for a while. So she really loves string music and she really knows how to write for it. And she's written a lot for quartet repertoire. She's written 2 rhapsodies at this point. So she really knows how to get around the instrument, and it really shows in the way that she composes. This piece was written in 2014, and I think it's important to first, establish what a rhapsody is, because she takes the classic rhapsody formula and kind of turns it on its head in this piece, which I think is really interesting. But rhapsodies in their purest form, like the form of Gershwin and Bartok and Liszt and all those Rhapsody people. Rhapsodies are, sort of songs stitched together. And so it's a structure of piece that highlights expression over structure. And so, classic rhapsodies are, generally have theme after theme after theme, and it's kind of this exploration of sound and color, without following, the Germanic through line of exposition, development, theme A, theme B, go to the dominant kind of thing. So it was awarding composers a huge amount of artistic freedom in the late Romantic period. And so what often rhapsodies turned into, as I just said, was just kind of a loose collection of different melodies. Bartok's, for instance, it starts in the first melody, and then goes into, and then a few minutes later, and then, but it never really develops on each one much. But the point of the main piece is to develop the idea. And so what Jessie Montgomery does in this Rhapsody is she doesn't just take, a selection of different melodies, but she takes one very specific motive and elaborates it basically to its tonal potential. She doesn't go into much, experimental sounds and whatnot, like she does in some of her other music for this piece. But if you've taken a little bit of a look at this music, you'll notice that there's a really clear through line. The entire thing of the melody that's presented at the very beginning, and that's the foundation for the entire piece. I could really point to any kind of singular moment and it's hiding there somewhere. And so what I think about as I'm playing this piece is really trying to, explore the context what she uses, and like, you know, what key she's using it in, what instruments, you know, what rhythm. Even at the beginning here, it starts out and it's, you know, piano espressivo andante, and it's this really murky kind of, for lack of a better word, dark blue kind of soundscape. The way I think about it. And then the second voice comes in. And it's right there. So even at the beginning of this piece, you have this very self-reflective version of the theme. Which is interrupted by a slightly more forthcoming and experimental. And then in the second theme, after this fermata, which ends on this unison, the more forthcoming version doesn't even let the top line finish. Sorry. And then it develops from there. So that's what I love to think about through this entire piece, because the way that each phrase transitions into itself is so interestingly done. Very next theme. There are like 3 lines there already intersecting, and then it really fades out into this really kind of creepy and in a very singing way, kind of like opening of Sibelius Concerto kind of. And then she combines with a completely different zone. And so now she's using it in a kind of, I don't know, however you want to think about it, but she's using this little like microcosm of music to build this entire rhapsody, as opposed to the normal structure of using little bits and then just constantly changing to different little bits. She's only using this one theme and building universe out of it. And so it goes on like this for a while. She starts introducing double stops, and this is where we, you know, begin to thank her for spending so much time learning how to play the violin, because a lot of these in the sound world, you're really able to like sink into the string. When it finally gets to, you know, forte dynamics, it's this and the oboe. In this really resonant section of the instrument, it's these nice fifths that you can really let your hand relax into, so that there's this great amount of resonance going on. Before going into, right now I'm looking at measure 22. And at first thought, when I was first learning this, I didn't really, I first imagined this as a really kind of, my old teacher would always describe it as, you know, like the little floaty things in Avatar. That would just kind of like float down and like, or a leaf is a better way of putting it, just kind of being pushed by the wind. And you know, she even writes fluidly and wandering, and so I always saw this as kind of just floating around. But even in this, I later realized that it's all just that theme. So it's not so much, you know, wandering, getting pushed around by the wind, but it's trying to find a new context to exist in. So it's constantly changing keys, it's constantly changing speed, going from 4 to 6 to 6 to 5 to 7 to, you know, changing dynamics, and it starts going back and forth in these dynamics and these trajectories until it finally gets into this really beautiful, in measure 29, this bariolage kind of mode. Where she's utilizing like the resonance of the open strings on top of this. And so you can really explore like the depth of the sound there, which I find really beautiful. And yeah, I also find it really important to really just view that as that open D string is just kind of providing a space for this to exist upon. It doesn't need to be even in any sense. Because I don't think this is a... these 16th notes don't need to be even. I think the general big beat idea and that like kind of obsessive way of holding that A, which generally would have just been held in the normal note there, but now so you're constantly going back and forth between these resonant open strings. And then that goes on for a while, and it's kind of swimming around in this area before it finally breaks into a different voice. And of course, that new voice is existing, and then that really beautiful, you know, when she marks piano dolce. And then in each of these, she marks out, you know, in a way that you know, Prokofiev would do it a lot when he had these kind of, these fun little accompaniment phrases underneath, you know, very explicitly stated line. There are dashes. So you know to bring those out. And I don't generally think of that kind of marking as being a, you know, a tactile thing, an articulation thing in and of itself. I think it can get a little bogged down if we start, you know, bum bum, but just like, you know, putting that on a different plane, like a slightly different touch in the right hand, slightly different touch in the slightly different way of touching the, you know, the string, the open strings, everything there. And when she finally goes into this piano dolce, sorry, when she hits that B natural, which after this whole section of those B flats, you finally get that B natural, which really propels the entire motion into what a few measures later at 59 will be marked wild and fortissimo, and it's just huge. I guess those are also bariolages, but you know, these four note go, and of course is hiding up there at the top. But at that point, I don't even think about bringing that out, just because it's, you know, the texture of it is so thick, and I think that's the wild portion of it. And it's almost like that top note is more of an Easter egg than, that's a very video gaming term. It's more of a secret than the main part. So you can really dig in. Getting all these open strings. And a slight version. And so it's really just the culmination of what this theme has been trying to evolve itself into for this entire piece so far. It's been interrupting itself, and it's been building up tension, but now it's finally just able to ride the wave of, you know, full instrumental resonance, or full instrumental resonance. But, you know, it's really, really rich and very, you know, healthy approach to the string. and that leads to this really, really interesting recap, which starts in this really tumultuous kind of way to cap off that, very open and very resonant. She kind of falters along this. And so you're able to just kind of revel in that. And then stay in that chord for a bit. And then it just kind of, all of a sudden, abandons that, passion by openness, and becomes, and it's marked triple forte rubato. I think it's important that she does mark in every bowing for the first measure or so, and so it's very obviously a hum, pum, 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 pum. It's this very, I don't want to say distressed. I mean, I certainly feel distressed playing it, because it is just sevenths, and no one practices sevenths in their scales, so you have to practice these a little bit. Or if you don't, then let me know how you do it. But it's gone from this method of passion as being length to now it's very, very vertical and very crunchy and very swindly. And then it goes into this funky little whole tone scale of thirds and 2 bars of writ, and then finally lands back at the recap with a low. And then things are as normal in this kind of, the theme has gone to this different place, and now that it's brought back, I believe, note by note, it's exactly identical to the first couple lines of the piece, but now everything has this new context, and so this is one of my favorite moments in performance, because you get to feel the space and how the space around you has changed, and there's this at the beginning there's a quietness too, but there's this kind of bubblingness because of expectancy, and it's the beginning of the piece, and no one's quite sure what's going on. But when you get back here, after the big chords, and then after the sevenths, and then you're just brought back to the quietness in that is really really something special. And so then it repeats itself in a standard kind of recap way, until what I think could be considered coda, the reflective and improvisatory last dozen measures or so, which are consordino. And again, it's the final. If the first half of the piece was building up the intensity then the second half of the piece, after these sevenths, is letting it unravel and letting it go away peacefully. And so there's this reflective improvisatory bit, where you have these quintuplets. And then some fancy rhythms. Special note. And these, it's written in a very you know, being quintuplets, and we're always taught, you know, it needs to have this, like, for things swing to this, but it's really, yeah, these are the things from Avatar where it kind of just kind of floats away, and when it runs out of energy, I'll get the bow out of your face. When it runs out of energy is when that gentle trill stops. It's more of a gentle trill than anything. You know. You just really enjoy those dissonances because it's just a sigh out. And then this, just like in the beginning, it's that register that is trying to bring some life back into the, but then it sighs back, and now there's even less energy on the trill figure. Hope with this, which I believe is a reference to a chord earlier in the at the beginning of the piece in measure 17 with that chord, and Jessie Montgomery revisits that chord back here in the piece's kind of dying moments. And then we go even deeper into ourselves, and it's sul ponticello, and it's intimate, so it's like the piece has lost its voice, like physically lost its voice at this point. And so it's trying to whisper, but it's just kind of hoarse about it. So then you have this little bow trill. She writes as an unmeasured tremolo between two strings. And so it's going even further in the direction of it doesn't have to be anything energetic, but it's just, it's the sound giving out, really. Which is really beautiful and really, really touching. And then it ends the same way that the recap ended, that, you know, it ended at measure 13 before we got to the first Pumoso, with the motto. I was really out of tune. And so the final touches are the same kind of positive note, honestly, that has propelled propelled a new section each time after it occurs, and it's the way the piece finishes, and you can see there's a diminuendo to an N, which is niente, which means either death or nothingness. Can't quite remember right now, but that's the idea, is that it's just nothing. And yeah, that's how this piece, does its thing. That's why I think it's a really effective, really well-paced, and really, beautiful ideas of tonality and rhythm and voicing, which is really fantastic. So I hope this has been, somewhat helpful to you, and I applaud you for taking the steps to learn this fantastic work that's, you know, really new to our musical canon. It was only written 7 years ago. And as we all know, it takes a long time. It takes generations of people learning how to play pieces. You know, we've been playing Beethoven for ever, well, not forever, for a couple hundred years. And so at this point, you know, we have a direction of, you know, what we think the piece should sound like, and we've been hearing it since we were kids, and so we have a way of, you know, coping with the idea of, you know, what we want it to sound like. But this is uncharted territory. And of course, Jessie Montgomery has made a recording, and there have been a fair amount of people that have made recordings of this so far, but it's still open for, and very clearly open for interpretation, and I applaud you for taking the effort to, you know, take the plunge into this new world of contemporary music. And I wish you the best. Thank you so much.